Following the end of World War II in 1945, a new era of optimism swept across the country, and returning GIs immediately got back to the business of having fun. Automobiles were becoming more than just transportation, but were providing the raw materials for a lot of that fun as the new sport of hot rodding was quickly emerging. Souped-up rods, primarily a product of Southern California in the 1950s, were growing in numbers as a national presence, but street racing and widespread rowdyism were two unwanted byproducts of the hot rodding movement. Enter Wally Parks, who, along with a dedicated group of determined hot rodders, including such pioneers as Marvin Lee and Ack Miller, worked tirelessly to bring organization and unity to this new population of post-war motorheads by creating the National Hot Rod Association in 1951. Stressing safety on the streets and utilizing airport runways and the California dry lakes to give hot rodders secure racing facilities. It was the weekend of April 11, 1953, when the first ever NHRA-sanctioned event unfolded in Pomona, California, with the Southern California Championship Drags, a cooperative effort under the guidance of the NHRA, Pomona Valley Timing Association, and several local hot rod clubs. The turnout of both cars and spectators was remarkable, with nearly 400 cars on the entry list and a crowd of close to 16,000 fans lining the quarter mile to see such racers as Carlos Ramirez in his infamous Bean Bandit Mark II, Dawson Hadley, the overall dragster class winner, and future Hall of Famer Don Nicholson before earning the nickname Dino Don, picking up their share of the 39 class trophies handed out that weekend. Compared to the national event spectacles of the NHRA of today, it was a humble and homespun affair, but its historical significance and the subsequent growth and popularity of NHRA drag racing is undeniable. The NHRA's ambitious quest to legitimize hot rodding in the 1950s was given an enormous boost in 1954, when the Safety Safari was first established. Bud Coons, Chick Cannon, Bud Evans, and Eric Rickman, the four original members of the Safety Safari, traveled across the country setting up timing equipment at sanctioned events, performing safety inspections on competitors' race cars, and spreading the message that hot rodding and drag racing could be well-organized, community-friendly activities if those involved in this new and ever-growing sport would work together.
Early hot rods like this one, the Glass Slipper, were a far cry from the 4-second, 300-mile-an-hour nitro-fueled dragsters of today. Back in 1955, race cars like this converged in Great Bend, Kansas for the first of what was and still is the sport's premier event, the U.S. Nationals.
What has grown to become the most prestigious event in all of drag racing, the U.S. Nationals, grew from rather unpretentious beginnings dating back to 1955. The first U.S. Nationals was held on the massive 8,000-foot runway at Great Bend Municipal Airport in Great Bend, Kansas in late September of that year. 30 different classes of race cars were entered, and the list of drag racing pioneers such as Art Chrisman, Lloyd Scott, Jazzy Jim Nelson, Leland Kolb, and Calvin Rice was indeed impressive. It was Rice in his J.E. Riley & Son Special and Fred Vogt in his Chrysler-powered machine facing each other in the title round. But the worst rainstorm to hit Kansas in 39 years canceled the final round at Great Bend. And 6 weeks later, the U.S. Nationals Championship was decided outside of Phoenix, Arizona. After several false starts and a quick transmission replacement in Rice's car, the 25-year-old racer from Santa Ana, California beat Vogt, making Calvin Rice the first NHRA U.S. Nationals champion in history. Up until 1960, fans of the ever-growing sport of NHRA drag racing had little in the way of up-to-date and informative sources to keep track of what was happening at NHRA events and at the California-based organization itself. NHRA founder Wally Parks made the decision that year to launch a new bi-weekly publication, which would provide fans with race results from the many NHRA-sanctioned drag strips, reports on the top performers and what they were achieving from coast to coast, and publish race schedules and numerous announcements of upcoming events and activities being planned by the NHRA. The best weekly motorsports publication in the world. The NHRA's U.S. Nationals has long been the Super Bowl of drag racing since the very first edition of this hallowed event took place on an airport runway in Great Bend, Kansas in 1955. Over the next 4 years, the U.S. Nationals moved from Great Bend to Kansas City, Missouri in 1956, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma in 1957 and 1958, to Detroit, Michigan in 1959 and 1960, before moving to what has now become its permanent address, Lucas Oil Raceway in Indianapolis, Indiana in 1961. In 1983, a modern and well-equipped race tower made its debut, dedicated to NHRA founder Wally Parks and his wife Barbara. And that year, the late Steve Evans described the new structure to the TV audience.
Back in the early 60s, when the U.S. Nationals first came to IRP, that old tower over there was brand new and considered the finest around. This year, out of necessity, it's been replaced by the magnificent four-story building behind me at a cost of some $400,000. The ground floor houses the raceway administration offices. The second floor, the race control, public address, timing, scoring, and also a completely equipped press room. The top two floors are luxurious VIP suites for important corporate sponsors, and the top is just an ideal vantage point on the observation deck. I guarantee you, this one is the finest around.
All in all, Lucas Oil Raceway has been the scene of an endless stream of drag racing history since the U.S. Nationals made this facility its home in 1961.
Flying by a half a car length, Kenny Bernstein moves into the finals for the...
From the earliest beginnings of drag racing, from the illegal outlaw street races held on public roads and highways, to the organized events created by the National Hot Rod Association to eliminate those dangerous hot rodding contests, the method of starting each pair of competitors had been performed by simply waving a flag. The flagman became a familiar sight at NHRA-sanctioned races, and his duties included not only flagging off the race machines, but carefully staging each car in the starting line properly. In 1963, all of that changed at NHRA events when the Krondek Electronics Company began equipping NHRA venues with an electronic starting system consisting of amber, green, and red bulbs, which was immediately nicknamed the Christmas tree. False starts had been a frequent problem under the flagman system, and restarts were a frustrating nuisance. The new system electronically detected if a driver jumped the gun, and the dreaded red light became virtually infallible when indicating a racer had left too soon. There was an equal number of advocates and opponents to the Christmas tree when it first made its debut, but over the years, having undergone several changes in configurations, the Christmas tree has not only become a reliable and uniform method of ensuring even starts for both cars in any drag race, but a veritable trademark for the sport recognized all over the globe. The list of drag racing accomplishments and milestones achieved by Big Daddy Don Garlits is long and prolific, but perhaps the one which drag racers had coveted most during the 1960s, the breaking of the 200-mile-per-hour barrier, became property of the scrappy, innovative genius from Tampa, Florida in 1964. Unofficially, Garlits had run over 200 miles per hour at Detroit Dragway that year, and actually made two 200-mile-per-hour passes at Great Meadows Dragway in New Jersey sometime later. But those runs were made at match race facilities, not at sanctioned NHRA events, so they could not be considered official records. It wasn't until Garlits returned to Great Meadows several weeks after his match race appearance that he finally made what is considered to be the first official 200-mile-per-hour run in NHRA history, blasting to an elapsed time of 7.78 seconds at 201.34 miles per hour. Hot rodders have always been consumed by the quest to go faster and faster. When early drag racers began using nitromethane to fuel their racing engines, elapsed times and speeds dropped, but the powerful fuel mixtures increased the risk of disastrous engine explosions, which became a safety concern for the NHRA. On April 1, 1957, the NHRA instituted a ban on nitromethane at all of their sanctioned racetracks. It wasn't until 1964, 7 years later, that the ban was lifted, thanks to improved safety measures and increased fire protection for the drivers, giving fans the lightning-quick times and breathtaking speeds that only nitro drag racing could provide. While women had always played an important role in the annals of drag racing history, either by providing support and encouragement to their boyfriends and husbands as they competed as either amateurs or professionals, and occasionally performing odd jobs while helping prepare the family race car, females rarely found their way behind the steering wheel at NHRA national events, and so the idea of a woman winning an NHRA national event title was never a distinct possibility throughout the sport's early years. That is until 1966, when the team of Shirley Shahan and her husband H.L. Shahan arrived in Pomona for that year's Winter Nationals with their top stock Plymouth Belvedere. H.L. tuned the car while wife Shirley took on the driving duties. Shirley was nearly flawless during eliminations, getting past such challenging opponents as Roger Lindemuth, Butch Leal, and Bill Grumpy Jenkins, who had won the top stock class the year before at the Winter Nationals, before Shirley beat Ken Heineman in the final round with her 11.26 second elapsed time at over 126 miles per hour. That victory made Shirley the first woman in NHRA history to win an NHRA national event trophy. Just as it is today, in 1967, winning the U.S. Nationals was indeed the biggest prize and the biggest racer in the sport's history. Big Daddy Don Garlits was not having a great 1967 season. While other top fuel racers were running in the 6-second range with great frequency, Big Daddy had yet to break into that zone. He failed to qualify at the race in Bristol, Tennessee, and began growing a beard after that disappointing outing, vowing not to shave until he had succeeded in running in the 6s. It wasn't until the final round at the next race, the U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis, facing James Warren, that Garlits ran his first 6, a 6.77 second elapsed time, which beat Warren and caused such a wild reaction in the grandstands. Fans poured onto the track and surrounded Big Daddy as he gleefully shaved his beard in the winner's circle, adding yet again to the towering legacy of the sport's greatest racer. When Detroit's automakers got heavily involved with NHRA drag racing in the early 1960s, the legendary muscle car wars began one of the sport's most fiercely competitive battles. GM, Ford, and Chrysler knew that winning on the drag strip meant winning at the bottom line, since the youth market was in command of America's economy. Factory hot rods evolved throughout the decade, and by 1969, the superstock and factory experimental categories gave way to wildly radical full-bodied race cars, bearing full-tube chassis and nitro-burning supercharged engines. In the beginning, because of the altered wheelbases used for better weight distribution, primarily on Dodges and Plymouths, these outrageous machines looked funny, and thus the term funny car was born, becoming an official NHRA class in 1969. For years, drag racers competing in the NHRA had received a wide assortment of trophies and plaques to reward their victories at national events. It wasn't until 1969 that the most enduring symbol of success on the quarter mile was introduced, a trophy which stands 18 inches high, weighs 12 pounds, and is composed of a solid walnut base adorned with a brass-plated figure holding a helmet and standing next to a racing slick. Known to all as the Wally in honor of NHRA founder Wally Parks, it is now awarded to every category winner, both sportsman and professional, at every NHRA national event. While most assume the likeness atop the Wally is none other than Wally Parks himself, the man actually used to model for the trophy was Top Gas dragster driver Jack Jones. Prior to 1970, big-time corporate sponsorship in the NHRA was essentially non-existent. It wasn't until Don the Snake Perdome and his friend and rival Tom the Mongoose McEwen struck $1 million deal with Mattel Toys to sponsor their Nitro Funny cars that a major non-automotive American manufacturer was investing in NHRA drag racing. A line of legendary Hot Wheels toys was introduced and was an immediate sensation, promoted by the Snake and Mongoose rivalry that brought legions of new fans to the sport. That corporate partnership opened the door to countless other American businesses becoming enthusiastic sponsors of the world's fastest motorsport. Even 41 years after it happened, the Top Fuel final at the 1970 U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis remains one of the most dramatic and emotionally intense drag races in all of NHRA history. Before packed grandstands at what was then called Indianapolis Raceway Park, Don the Snake Perdome, who had already won the Big Go twice and was the defending Indy champion, faced off against Jim Nicole, who had been a runner-up at the previous 2 NHRA national events and was looking for his first U.S. Nationals title. Both dragsters left together, were side by side for the entire quarter mile, until the Snake barely edged Nicole at the finish line. Then, Nicole's clutch suddenly exploded, sawing his dragster in half, with the engine and front end streaking down the shutoff area, and the roll cage, with Nicole still strapped in, bouncing over the guardrail and landing in the grass. A stunned Perdome was sure his fellow racer had been seriously hurt or killed, was clearly distraught, and even mentioned quitting the sport.
I think I'm quit. Oh my God, yeah, cargo body, I couldn't believe it. There was no back section on it or nothing. How bad is he? It's started on 8. God.
But miraculously, Nicole was only slightly injured, much to the relief of all who were on hand for that remarkable Top Fuel Indy final.